So, folks, welcome back to the Virtual Journeys. It's been a while since the last Virtual Journey came up, partly because of Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. And the Virtual Journeys now are finally leaving the kibbutz after a couple of months, really, of lockdown. So we're in Tel Aviv. I'm going to do a couple of journeys over the next few days with you. I'm filming them all today, but they're going to come out over a couple of days in Tel Aviv. Now, I want to start in a way which might feel a little unusual. One of the hallmarks of any successful national liberation movement is the name of the streets. When a national liberation movement succeeds, the street names change. So in America, you have a lot of Washington, a lot of Jefferson, and other names that probably have Kennedy all over the show, and Lincoln. In South Africa, you have Mandela. God knows what you have in Australia and New Zealand. Over here in Israel, if you ask any young Israeli kid, who was Herzl? Most of them will say a road. Some of them might remember a man with a beard. If you ask any Israeli kid, Ben Gurion, some of them will remember the first prime minister. Many of them will know a road. Golda Meir, most of them a road. If you ask any Israeli kid, let's say in Tel Aviv, for example, about the street called Arlozorroff, they'll say, Arlozorroff? Never heard of Arlozorroff. So we want to know more than the average school child about Ben Gurion. So when we want to know about Ben Gurion, we sometimes go down to Sde Boker in the Negev, where we visit both his desert home and the extraordinarily beautiful spot he chose to be buried in. When we want to know more about Theodor Herzl, we go to Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, to the place where he was laid to rest. In fact, where his body was laid to rest for a second time, having been buried originally in Vienna. If we want to know more about Golda Meir, we go to the same cemetery at Mount Herzl and we tell the story standing next to her grave. When we want to talk about Arlozorroff, the question is, of course, where should we go? So we are going to go now and look for Arlozorroff. We are going to look for Arlozorroff at one very particular moment in his life. Don't think that Arlozorroff would want us, to be honest, to go to this point to talk about him. But I want to go to this place to talk about Arlozorroff, because even though Arlozorroff was an extraordinary and outstanding individual during his life, it was actually the moment of his death which reveals a remarkable story. For me, a story which shows that sometimes facts are stranger than fiction. Come with me and we will now go and look for Arlozorroff to try and tell an extraordinary story. So here we are. We are looking for Arlozorroff. Not for Arlozorroff himself, but to find out where there is somewhere that relates directly to the story. So we look out into the sea. Beautiful day, by the way, down on the beach. This was taken towards the end of Corona. Can't find him. We look towards the Gordon swimming pool. We don't find him. We look up towards the Carlton Hotel, where some of us have stayed in the past, and hopefully you come in the future will stay with me. Can't find him. We look over in this direction, below the Hilton Hotel. Hello. There's this god-awful piece of sculpture, that green monstrosity in back, probably the worst piece of memorialization I've ever seen in my life. We look down right next to it. What do we see? We see a portrait in bronze of Chaim Arlozorroff. This is where Chaim Arlozorroff ended his life. Let me take a seat and we'll tell the story. So I promised you a story in which fact is stranger than fiction. The story of Chaim Arlozorroff. Most of you, I'm sure, have never heard of him. Don't feel badly. Almost nobody remembers Arlozorroff today. However, in the period before the creation of the state, he was second only to David Ben Gurion in terms of his importance as a political and intellectual leader of labor Zionism before the state of Israel was proclaimed. Chaim Arlozorroff has a life story which really is very hard to believe. He was born in Eastern Europe, but he went to study as a young man in Berlin. He was a very attractive young man, And important for the latter part of the story, when he was studying at university, he had a torrid love affair with a young woman with a very, very bizarre family history, which was partly, had started off really with a Jewish parent, but when she met Arlozorroff, she was really not self-identifying in any way as a Jew and had really been absorbed into Gentile society in Germany. Her name was Marta. He had a really, really intense love affair with her when he was at university. They split up, however, maybe because he was a Zionist and wanted to come and live over here, I'm not sure. But he arrives over here and it's the end of their relationship. So Arlozorroff is over here in Eretz Yisrael, in British mandated Palestine, and very soon he gets involved in Jewish politics on the ground. One of the things that one has to understand when learning about Israel is that there is an extraordinary period over here from around the 1910s, 20s onwards until the state is created, a period of 20, 30 years, in which there is a group of highly motivated, talented people who are working strategically to create what they hope is going to be an independent Jewish state. They create what is known as the state on its way, HaMedina Shebederech. And he is absorbed into the leadership of this group under David Ben-Gurion, and soon he rises to be number 2 in the situation. It's the 1930s. The early 1930s, clearly things are changing dramatically for the Jews in Europe, and in 1933, the Nazis come to power in Germany. The leadership over here is focusing not only on the country that they are going to create over here, they're also focusing on what is happening in Europe. And they make a strategic decision to try and find a way to begin to save Jewish lives. And the decision is basically based on the following issue, or the following principle. Let's try and negotiate Jewish lives for Jewish capital in Germany. Put very simply, we will try and make it worthwhile financially for the new Nazi regime in Germany to release Jewish people, and they can come and join the Zionist effort in the land of Israel. Who is chosen to do this? Arlozorroff. Why is Arlozorroff chosen to do this? Well, one could argue because he had studied in Berlin and therefore was fluent in German, but he has an additional advantage. His girlfriend, Marta, who had been the love of his life until he decided to come and live over in Israel, in what was at that point British mandated Palestine, has a new relationship. And this new relationship puts her in the most appropriate place to be of aid to Arlozorroff. Marta has a new last name. She has got married in the interim. This is where fact is stranger than fiction. Her last name is now Goebbels. Marta has married Joseph Goebbels, one of the leaders of the Nazi party, one of the people closest to Adolf Hitler. Arlozorroff goes to Germany, and he, via Marta Goebbels, whom he gets in touch with, he sets up a meeting with the German leadership to try and begin to negotiate Jewish money versus saving Jewish people. The meeting is set up, and at the last minute before he goes to this meeting, he is warned, possibly by Marta herself, that it's a trap. That she has found out that the German leadership is going to murder him if he comes to the meeting. He manages to escape, flee Germany, and come back to Eretz Yisrael, to British mandated Palestine, empty-handed. However, the news of what he has been involved in gets out. And he goes for a walk one day to this very spot that you saw me sitting in a few moments ago. He's going for a walk along the promenade, just as many of us do today, and hopefully you will do with me when you come to visit. And here he is shot and killed on this very spot. After his murder, it's a huge uproar, as you can imagine, in what is called the Yishuv, the Jewish community. The British authorities arrest 2 people. They are right-wing Jewish activists, and they are charged with his murder. And just think of the situation. He has gone to Germany to try and negotiate for Jewish lives. He is saved at the last minute from being assassinated in Germany. He returns to Israel, to the land of Israel, to British mandated Palestine. And here he is murdered. Why? According to the initial findings, because the right wing over here finds out that he was negotiating with the enemy and therefore in a way see him as a collaborator, and he is murdered. What is interesting, by the way, is that at the end of the day, the two people who are arrested are acquitted. And until this day, nobody knows for sure who murdered Arlozorroff. Still one of the favorite theories, of course, that he was a victim of right-wing assassination, one of the early political assassinations within the Jewish community in the land of Israel. There's another theory that he was killed by Arabs from Jaffa. Nobody really knows. So folks, every now and then, fact is stranger than fiction. And on this place, the place that you saw just a few minutes ago when I was in Tel Aviv preparing this virtual journey for you, this is where the story of Chaim Arlozorroff ended. Today you walk 20 to 30 yards from this place and you're on Arlozorroff Street. Who knows the story of Chaim Arlozorroff? You know a bit of it now. Look forward to seeing you on the next of our journeys. Take care.